Welcome or welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. Today, first of all, we have to thank our great friend in the community, Serena, Blindy Girl, for introducing ourselves to an absolute, I got to say this, and you knew I was going to say it, an absolute legend in the audio description and audio space, Roy Samuelson. I've known of you for a lot of years, man. I've always wanted to sit down and have a great conversation with you. So, of course, I'll ask you the question I ask everybody else. Who's Roy Samuelson? The life story, audio description, everything you're doing around the audio space. Tell me everything you want me to know, and don't tell me anything you don't want me to repeat. So go, tell me
that.
because you know that I have a global audience and I don't shut up. So if you don't want me to hear something, if you don't want me to repeat something, definitely don't say it here. Go, the life story. I'll mute my microphone. Go for it.
Where to start? This is a fascinating conversation just because audio description has gained so much traction on the entertainment industry, from TV and film to other aspects of video. And I've found myself going from being a performer of audio description for TV and film to stepping into the advocacy role, stepping into producing and consulting, and wrote a book about it. So there's a lot of different directions we can go. And I think what I'm most excited about being here with you is that, first of all, the connection with Serena. She's amazing. And so you're amazing, and it just by proxy. So it's so good to be here.
Well, really good. Excellent. Really good. Okay. Well, let's start with where you started out. Earlier in life with the acting. So you said that you've done a lot of acting and TV things. So what can you tell us about the acting things you've done, just to kind of build foundation, and how you became so aware of audio, and because your voice is perfect for audio and all of that. So how did you get into acting? What's your full background, by the way?
Oh, I love it. Thanks. So in college is when I really started doing theater performance. But in high school, I got to tell you, Aaron, I kept auditioning and I just couldn't book. I tried the best I could. Sometimes I got like a little background part or being in the chorus of a musical, and there was just so much excitement around it. And when the opportunity came in college to audition, it was kind of like a reset. And I found myself in a bunch of theater performances, and then working for Disney at Walt Disney World for a semester. And I actually got some college credit. Believe it or not, it's a doctorate degree. So that was kind of an unexpected curveball there.
That's super cool. What did you do for Mickey Mouse? What did you do for Disney?
It's funny. I think it was my first unofficial paid audio description. It was a ride. It was an attraction called the Great Movie Ride. And I ended up being a gangster, but I also played the role of like a tour guide.
Yeah.
And we would basically explain all the movie scenes. It's like, over here is Tarzan, or over here is Indiana Jones. And it's like we had to work in between the audio cues. We had to kind of jump in and jump out like the hokey pokey, and there was all sorts of special effects. And it kind of primed me for what audio description is.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you definitely have a perfect voice for that. Your voice is very warm and very bright and very cheerful, and your voice is definitely perfect for that. So really walk us through the ingredients. So how does that work, right? When they design audio description in a public setting, whether it's a ride or an amusement park or a public event, how does that work? How do they write the script? Really, really get under my skin. I really like to get in with people and get into the nitty gritty details. So how does this really work when they write scripts like that?
Oh, that's a good question. So the ride itself doesn't exist anymore, but at the time it wasn't audio description, but it was similar to what I do now in audio description. So what happened was the Imagineers at Disney created this whole ride experience, and it was moving theater cars that would go through all these different movie sets. And so everything was really timed to perfection. And just like with audio description, I was given a script. What was different about this script is that I had to memorize it. With audio description, I don't have to memorize it, but I'm still given a script. And a lot of people don't understand that they hear my voice on an audio description TV show or a movie, and they're like, oh, why did you write that? And it's like, oh, someone else wrote it. Someone else took a lot of time to make sure that those words came at just the right timing for just the right amount and just the right choices of what to describe.
Absolutely. And the words have to be perfectly timed when, with other characters speaking and other sounds that are in the environment. It's a very tricky thing. It's a very, very tricky thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then after that, so you worked for Disney, and what else did you do for Disney?
It was a semester then, and then another few summers afterward. And when I moved out to Los Angeles, I found myself working on the corporate side of Disney. So that was in the in the animation side, or the corporate consumer products team, or some other aspects. And so I got to work in a lot of different areas of Disney that's outside of what would normally be considered movie and TV production.
Wow, can you unfold that a lot more and tell me a little bit more about that? That sounds really interesting.
It was great. And at the time, I was filling in for people that might be on
Right.
maternity leave. I was a young kid and just figuring out this whole office admin situation. And I found the people that I worked with, that really made the difference.
Absolutely.
Right? It's like whatever it was, if it was on the finance team, or if it was animation, or if we were working on a movie on the production side, or just corporate synergy, working with consultants, the people made the difference. And every single time different personalities and finding out communication styles, it really taught me a lot about messaging and what to put out there and how. And it's, I still use a lot of that to this day.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Specifically, though, what projects do you remember working on when you were working in the back office of the Disney? What types of projects were you working on?
Most of them were pretty paper based, like administration, but I can tell you I worked for a recording artist for Hollywood Records. And so this was a different job, but it still was Disney under
Right.
Hollywood Records. And
Sure.
we got to tour with a lot of bands. This was an up and coming artist, and she and her musicians, and I was the tour manager. So putting
It's
together
incredible.
it was so much fun. I got to tell you, Aaron, we really got a lot of great opportunities, and I think it's because of that I ended up going to all 50 states. So
Super good.
it was a pretty enjoyable experience. Yeah.
So, and are you able to tell me who some of those musicians were that you managed?
Well, it was they've changed a little
Sure.
bit. So it's I think what was the biggest highlight for me was being able to really figure out the logistics. Like, we're under a tight budget of time, of money, of trying to get from one place to another, and how to navigate things when things changed at the last minute, whether that was a venue that was meant to be outside, but we had rain, or we had a bunch of equipment to move and the guitarist got sick and we had to find a last minute replacement. All of these things, as much as we plan for, there's always going to be a curveball, and being able to figure out, we still got to get this show going. How are we going to do it? So there was a lot of fun to have. I'm going to say behind the scenes. This was not me on microphone. I wasn't on stage, but being able to make sure that those that were on stage felt comfortable, that they knew what they needed to do and where they needed to be. And I just wanted to be everyone's support system to make sure that they got where they needed to get to and did what they needed to do. And we had a lot of fun too.
That
Yeah.
sounds like a ton of fun. That sounds like a
Yeah.
ton of work, but that sounds like a blast, an absolute
Yeah.
blast. And then there's all sorts of silly things that happen and all sorts of memories and people saying weird stuff over the years and things like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
What was so tell me what was your craziest memory in working as a tour manager? What was the craziest or the silliest thing that ever happened when you were working doing this management stuff? Yeah.
I think there's two stories that come to mind in no particular order, and I don't know why these are sticking out, but at one point I did jump into a pool with all my clothes on after hours, and I thought that sneaking under the corner would hide me from the security guard, and it did not. There was another time we had an opportunity to ride in a tank, and we were on some base for the military, and the group of us were so exhausted. We had been up for the last 10 nights performing and traveling, and it was like the one morning where we had freedom, and we actually chose to sleep instead of ride in a tank. And if I could use the word regret, that's probably the closest, is missing out on that opportunity.
Yeah, that's really funny. That's really interesting.
So tired.
Yeah. But I can understand, sometimes if you're that tired, you wouldn't necessarily want to do something crazy like that. Yeah, yeah, that
Yeah.
is all very entertaining. Absolutely. So you worked in the corporate side of Disney for this semester, and then what happened in your
It
life after
was
that? Yeah.
it really transitioned. I had the heart for performing, and I found myself there were a few little movie parts that I got, some scenes that I got to do in some movies and TV shows, but I found myself in a opportunity to be part of a workout group for voiceover. So you can imagine going to the gym and exercising different muscles on the different, running on the treadmill or lifting bench presses or whatever. But this was for voiceover. And so a handful of us would meet at a studio in person and we would practice commercial copy. Copy meaning scripts, little half-minute commercial scripts that we would read, or we would practice animation, or we would do narration for something like an audiobook. And the group of us really collaborated, that we all tried to support each other. It was such a safe environment to play. We got to meet some agents that would come in and teach us what they were looking for. So it gave us some access to some knowledge of, hey, this is what an agent's looking for, at least that particular agent. And what was really interesting, Aaron, is that all of those people have gone on to do some pretty amazing things. It's been pretty neat to see how, the expression "a rising tide lifts all ships." That was definitely the rising tide being a part of that VO workout. And most of these are done virtually now, so it's a little different.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. And I've done some volunteer voice acting as well. I love using my voice as well. I've done some volunteer stuff playing. I usually play a character, either an evil character or a good character, but
Nice.
not one in the middle. With my deep voice, I don't do middle ground people. I either play the person that's the God person,
Uh-huh.
or the evil spirit person. Usually,
Gotcha.
I've done a lot of that.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so what can you tell me when it comes to, what are, in the voice acting space? I'm sure a lot of blind people ask you. Let me tell you, reading a commercial, and I've done it for my own show when I do little sponsor segments, it's actually pretty hard. You got to take a deep breath. You got to get your breathing just right. It's not quite as easy as people think. But why don't you walk through, for those who don't know, what does it really take to be a voice actor? What are they really looking for, apart from just a really pleasant and strong voice? What are they really looking for?
Well, sometimes it's not even a pleasant or strong voice. It really depends on each project. And that's not even, different genres. The audiobooks has so much luxury of time and we can spread it out. Audio description, as you can imagine, goes a lot faster and has to be fitting in between cues. It's a lot like promoting TV shows, promo work. So there's all sorts of different approaches. And I think one of the things that a lot of people can kind of get an understanding of is if they use their phone to record their voice and then listen back to that recording. Most people are struck by what is that? You think about leaving a
Yeah,
voice message and playing back. It's like, that doesn't sound anything because we're so used to hearing our voice inside our own body. Everyone else
right.
is used to hearing our voice in their body, which is outside of our body. So it's like there's that acclimation, that adjustment of, oh, this is what I really sound like when it's not inside my body, when I'm listening to it literally outside. And then on top of that, and I go into some of the detail in my book, there's a lot of different voice acting approaches that work not only for audio description, but anything. I believe, and there's so many different approaches to acting. One of the things that I found very effective is intent. Like, what are you doing? Why are you saying this line? And who are you saying it to? And those two questions can really help uh, play text detective in figuring out, hey, what is the story we're trying to tell?
Absolutely. The why is so important when you think
Mm,
about script and why it's written that way.
hmm
Absolutely. That's so accurate. And the other thing too about, audio work, podcasting, YouTube, creating videos is, I would think that something that I produce, even here at Aaron's Opinion, would sound one way. But when I listened to it, I was like, wow, it sounded like that. I didn't know it did.
Huh,
Or,
sure.
you never know what product you actually produce until you actually listen back to it and hear what it actually sounded like when it came out the other end. That's the other magical part of it.
Nicely said.
But definitely, yeah, no, that's very, very, very accurate. So, I'm sure you've prepared for this question a lot. So, how many different voices can you do? What types of, not everybody does accents, not everybody does impressions or voices, but you seem pretty impressionable. So how many different impressions do you think you've been able to pull off?
You know,
Maybe you can highlight a couple of them, maybe.
I'm going to pivot a little bit and use that and say that while it may seem like there's no impressions, but every different project that I work on, I bring something to it based on what the script is. So it might sound like within the same area. I don't really do the accents or different dialects. I used to do that, but that's not really my focus anymore. It's bringing my voice to the script in a way that makes sure that the script stays alive and that the audience, whether it's a audio description audience or someone watching the TV for a promo or a video game that I worked on, that they're in the story. And that's really the biggest, most important thing to focus on.
Absolutely. So what video games have you voiced?
There's been a few. We go back to, if you go to IMDb, believe it or not, they've got some credits there, and it's been fun to be a part of those. There's some pretty big names, and what's funny is that when I record it, it's not like I get a chance to play the game right away. It can sometimes take months or even years after it's released before even being able to play. So it can be hard to listen back without that context, unless you're a lead or something. And my experience has been playing supporting roles that are recognizable, but to find it in a 30, 60-hour game, it can be kind of challenging. So I don't even know necessarily how to direct people to listen to my video game stuff.
That would be hard because you'd have to know exactly what point of the game and what character and exactly where in the game you have to hear and look to actually hear the voice. Yeah, that would be tricky. Yeah.
Sure. It's not like YouTube where you can skip to minute 47:50 or something, It's kind of buried in there.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. That is very interesting. Yeah. I think that's why video game acting, voice acting for a video game is very interesting because you never know in what context the voice will come up in the end. It could be anywhere in that game. Yeah. Okay. Good. Good.
One of the cool things about that when it comes to auditioning or even actually doing the recording, whether it's video games, interactive work or audio description or commercials or animation, what I'm really excited about is, especially since the pandemic, that so many things have gone virtual, that the opportunities for blind professionals that do this work are going to, the access barriers are reduced, that the things that used to keep people from even having the opportunity to audition, those are being removed, whether it's a screen reader or a braille display or other aspects of access. It's really neat to see how welcoming that pivot to virtual has opened the door.
Yeah, absolutely. In some ways, I think things are a lot more welcoming, but then in the other way, it's a lot more competitive because we're competing all online all together. So it's two things happening at once. The barrier to entry is reducing, but the competition around the barrier is certainly increasing, at least I think, in my estimation. Yeah, for sure.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And with that, it's like making sure that because there are so many more people, it's making sure that we bring the best quality. And I'm hopeful that trend continues.
So you said we have to bring the best quality, right? So how do we measure quality, right? In such a competitive universe, how do you, Roy, measure quality? How can you really tell what's quality really?
I love this question. There's two different approaches. The first is the quality of what my best is. And what I love about best is that it doesn't necessarily follow a trajectory of a little bit better each day. I'd like it to be, but there's some days where I wake up and my best is simply getting out of bed. There's other days where I wake up and I can get 3 deadlines done and 5 meetings and record some sessions and somehow make sure that my accountant has all the information she needs to be able to process whatever she's doing. So the best is really relative. And so to answer the first part of that quality is to make sure, personally for me, am I doing a little bit better than I could yesterday? And if I can't, it's giving myself some grace to allow for that space to be able to say, my body needs to rest. I've been pushing really hard lately and this isn't sustainable. The other thing is, instead of pointing my finger at other people and saying, oh, look at what that person is doing, that if you can imagine being on a freeway that I'm going to a destination, and there might be cars going faster than me, there might be cars going slower than me, but we're all traveling to our destination and we're all going to get there. And being able to not look at, in this context, the other cars, to not look at the other people and in the sense of comparing myself, but actually comparing to what I'm doing. Am I doing a better read than I did a year ago or 6 months ago or even last week? How am I improving? I'm still coaching. I still have coaches that teach me how to bring my best. And that is something that keeps things going on my own personal quality. I think the other aspect of quality, and we can talk specifically about audio description for film and TV, is that our audiences are being educated as to what quality means. And I think there's something incredibly important about the accessibility of the immersive experience that for far too often our blind audience members have found that certain projects have audio description, and I'm shaking my head, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's matching what's happening on screen. And again, I go into some of the details in my book, but there's something about that immersive experience that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes our blind audiences are denied. And that is something that has to do with quality.
Yeah, definitely. You really have to get the quality just right, and you really have to know, exactly with TV, it has to be just the problem with TV with audio description, it has to be just right. It can't be almost right. It can't be pretty right. It has to be just right. That's kind of the trick. It's a very tricky balance, I think, with TV. And that's in a lot of what you just said, by the way, is what I tell myself as a podcaster and what I tell other blind people who want to get into the industry. I keep saying over and over, stop comparing yourself to other people. Stop worrying about other people. Other people have so many problems, they don't have time to worry about you. So just take one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. And you have to keep taking baby steps as long as you know where you're going. You will eventually get there. And that's what I've been telling people for many years, is you just have to keep stepping in the right direction. Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
So then, yeah, you're so right about that. And so then you got into doing audio description for TV, and movies and films. So why don't you work through that some?
The opportunity came indirectly. I was part of a group of writers, and I was an actor in this group. But these writers worked on TV shows and movies. They were all produced or were produced on, so it was a pretty high caliber of content. And what they would do, these writers would bring in 25 pages of their script, and four of them would do this every Monday night, every week. And part of that was, as an actor, I was given a script, and I would show up and be thrown a script and step right up and go. There was no time to practice. There was no time to rehearse. Eventually, we got out of actual physical paper and got into iPads, which obviously made a big difference, not only for accessibility, but also for being able to, save some paper and the page turns and such. But what was really interesting about it is it trained me on two things. The first is what I mentioned, the ice cold read, where I'm given a script and you just got to go with it. That is very similar to how most of audio description can be. It's not always like that, but it can be very, very fast. And the other aspect of that experience was learning about story, that for most of my life, I am a performer. And so I've mistakenly thought that the spotlight is on me and me doing the best I can. There's aspects to that are true. But what that writers group really taught me, just by showing up and I do the best I could, and afterward, the writers were talking about the story. And they were using the performance to inform how the story unfolded. So I was actually supporting the story. And I think that was the change, Aaron, to be able to see that, yeah, I'm doing my best for the performance, but the spotlight is on the story, not me. And that gave me such a radical reshift to focus on, am I telling the story the best way I can so that I can stay out of the way and the story shines? And whether that's through my character, if it's through narrating the scene descriptions, which are very similar to audio description, it was a great training ground. And it was through that opportunity that I met someone who introduced me to the company that I auditioned for audio description.
And what was that company and what happened?
Oh yeah, it was so because a lot of the things have changed
Hmm.
specifically because of virtual. So I live in Los Angeles, and it was a local company that provided audio description. But what's really neat is there are certain companies, particularly on the East Coast and the West Coast, that are in person, and there's a lot of other companies that have situations where it's browser based. So as long as you have a fast internet and secure way to record, and it doesn't have echo, and it's a professional studio, location doesn't necessarily matter for these other companies that don't require in-person recording. So yeah, the opportunity itself was showing up for an audition, and I wrote about this. It was such a remarkable experience to see all these different parts of voiceover come together in audio description. And I was just thrilled to have the opportunity and to discover it. That was over 10 years ago.
Yeah, really good. So, what can you tell us about, the actual audition and walking through the steps of that audition and really what it took, really what happened? And then after you got hired by this company, what were some of the first shows that you actually described and the first plots and stories you told?
Gotcha. The audition was a very short scene from, I think, an IMAX film. And so it was this big sweeping kind of universe kind of thing where things were just so wonder filled and epic. And being able to bring that story out, I think is something that really helped. I worked on a handful of TV shows for the network, and if you go to theadna.org, that's theadna.org, that's the Audio Description Network Alliance. It's a internet movie database style for audio description performers like myself or writers. And while I haven't kept up with all the credits there, that's definitely the place to go to find all those specifics. But it's been fun to be on the same show for several seasons, and how that affected what, knowing the characters and knowing the flavor of the show, and with all the twists and plot turns and other things, it became really exciting to be able to bring those stories to life and find that nuance. I use the word nuance a lot.
Yeah. So what is that show, by the way? What is that show?
Oh, sorry. I'm avoiding. I don't mean to be avoiding it, but there's certain shows that if you were to name it, I could acknowledge it. But there's
Okay.
certain shows that I'm not alled to mention
Right. Sure.
myself.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah. That's
yeah.
fine. That's fine. That's very interesting. You're definitely right. You definitely have to put the nuance, and you definitely have to connect the flavor over a period of time. You're absolutely right, and that's a very very interesting thing. So yeah, yeah.
Mm, mm.
Okay, and then so what else can what else, and then after you started doing this for a few seasons, what else, what else have you done in the audio description space over
Well, there's
over this time?
Yeah, so the focus was definitely on the performance. And like I said, I found that a lot of blind audiences weren't aware of the work and the care and the commitment that was going into it, especially the writing. And it basically led up to an opportunity to present the keynote at ACB, American Council of the Blind, in 2020, to really unpack, here are the different aspects of audio description. Here's this department. This is writing. My part is performance, taking a script and reading it. There's also quality control. There's also the mix, the edit. Anytime that a blind audience has to fiddle with the volume up and down because of the explosions happening in the background or the audio description's too quiet, that's a mix issue. It's also timing. Why is everybody else in the audience laughing before I am? Or why am I laughing before they are? Or why is everybody crying? What happened? Oh, okay, now I get it. That's a timing issue. And all of these things work together like links in a chain. And any single one of them, if it's broken, it's not going to provide the access. And so it's really fascinating to see how the audio description awareness has been built simply because of the different departments, and also understanding, the last step of distribution. How does audio description get, a recorded audio description track get into the ears of someone who's watching a TV show? And why has it changed? Why does it sometimes happen at the theater and not on certain streaming shows? The whole cinema to streaming thing is something else I address in the book. It's a serious thing that a lot of people are working really hard on, and I find that as the Wild West of audio description is starting to shrink, there's a lot of things that we can be hopeful for.
Absolutely. Yeah. So can you break down and explain to the listener who might be sighted or might not be fully aware? So what is this whole disconnect between theater to stream, stream to theater, this whole thing that you just said about how sometimes audio description is available in theater, but not at home on, streaming platforms? Really break that down and explain that, I think, a little bit more.
I'd love to, first of all, acknowledge the frustration that it doesn't make sense. If I go to the movie theater and I watch a movie, I should be able to watch the same movie at home when it's on the streaming service, and that doesn't happen. So what I believe is happening is that here's the good part, and I want to make sure that this part is seen as the good part, that the streaming services recognize the gap, that there were all these titles coming in, TV shows and movies, that did not have audio description. And they recognized we're missing out on market share. Here's this opportunity for expanding our audience to blind people, and we're missing it. Now, it could have been that, there were some behind the scenes threats of being sued and you better or else. That's also, a possibility and true. There's a lot of motivation to make sure that audio description is included as a requirement. But these distribution channels were recognizing the opportunity and started creating audio description. And so the distribution company, for example, I'm going to name names, whether it's Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus or Amazon Prime, these companies were inheriting titles that didn't have audio description. And the distributors, were shelling out money to hundreds, if not thousands of projects to create audio description. So I want to celebrate that step now carved the way for audio description to have from maybe a few dozen to a few hundred titles to have over 12,000. The last time I checked on the audio description project site, over 12,000 projects have audio description. And I think a lot of it has to do with the streaming services stepping up. The problem with that is that production or even post-production, who owns the content, who filmed it, who created the mix for the audio, who edited it, that this content was sent to the distribution without audio description. And now all of a sudden distribution owns the audio description because they bought it. So if that content moves from one distribution place to another, it doesn't necessarily mean that the content is moving. So one of the points I make in the book, and I'm pretty, it seems to make a lot of sense, is if we can let production know about this, if production is aware, hey, audio description is going to bring access not only to blind people, but to blind audiences, friends, and family, and those who turn on audio description on a commute, or who might want to have access to the different names. So all these benefits of audio description, you as production, if you include it in your budget, then the distribution channels, they've already paved the way. They already know how to turn on or off the audio description. So just you pay for it, you own it, production company, send it to the distribution. And when that distribution goes to another, production still owns the audio description. So it's tethered. The audio description is stuck with the original production. I'm really getting into the weeds, Aaron.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's exactly what I want you to do, is to really get into to really get under my skin and get into the details. Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think what would need to happen is that these audio production companies would need to decide before we sell our product to a streaming service, we have to sell it with the audio description embedded. And then it's up to the blind viewer at home whether they want to turn it on or not. I would wonder, what it really comes down to. Have you done a study, and I have not done a study about it, so I don't know, but have you conducted a study to know how much more money a production company would make if they make sure that blind viewers are able to watch their productions? How much? I guess what I'm wondering is how much of how much of the audience are people who need audio description? What can you tell me about the need behind audio description, I guess?
It's funny you bring that up. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it is significant. There's I know Serena mentioned it on the Comic-Con panel that I put together a few weeks ago. So we'll have to review that and send it to you for a clip. What I'm finding is that it's if you look at it from the current situation, a streaming service is stepping up to create audio description for hundreds or thousands of titles, which means that they are now responsible for hundreds or thousands of audio description tracks. That is a lot. If we pivot to the production company, that's one. And that's one entity, the production company, that has a vested interest in the creative storytelling, in making sure that all audiences are included, that they have a stronger motivation than a distributor who has hundreds of projects to work together, that it's going to be a different focus. The distributors want to get as many titles of audio description as possible. The production company wants to make sure that the best story is being told. And that is where the money is. So pivoting to production, it's a drop in the bucket to their budget, assuming it's included early. And that's something that I'm really working hard on to advocate for. And I've had some successes in the entertainment side on that.
Yeah, absolutely. That is really interesting, you know. Yeah, I mean, for me as a blind person, audio description is important. You know, I do use my usable vision, but especially for people who cannot see at all, who are totally blind, or children, or really anyone, audio description can really, breathe life into a production for a lot of people. So, I've interviewed other people in other countries who are also, making huge impact in audio description too. And what they've told me is very similar to what you've said, is that this is a really, really important thing. That the problem is that most of society is not fully understanding the importance behind it. And this is a huge thing to get people to understand how important audio description actually is. Yeah, which is critically important. Yeah. But yeah, that's all very, very interesting. Yeah. And so, by the way, when did you write your book? And of course, you knew that I was going to ask, is it on Audible, by the way?
Better than that, it's on Bard. So any blind users who have a Bard account, it's available. If you go to roysamuelson.com/book, there's links to Audible if you prefer that. It's also on Spotify, and I think there's another audio sourced version. And it's a completely different experience, the audiobook versus the digital book or even the print version. The audiobook has quotes from my podcast that includes the actual words of the people that said it. And so, that's a lot different than reading it on a Braille display or a voiceover read.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So no, that's super good. I will definitely take a look at that. And we should definitely include that, by the way, in the description. I'll definitely get more information about that for sure. For sure. So yeah, I mean, as far as your podcast goes, how long have you been podcasting, by the way?
It's been about 5 years. We've got close to 250 episodes. So it's been about once a week with a little hiatus just so I could get the book finished.
Okay. So you started right about when I started around 5 years ago too, during the pandemic. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What made you get into podcasting? How did you start it? And what exactly, do you just talk about audio description or your life or so how do you focus your podcast? That's super cool. Yeah.
It's called the ADNA Presents, and it's tethered to the Audio Description Network Alliance. And so the idea was to peel back the curtain and behind the scenes audio description. And since then, we've had other focuses on accessibility in general and how it ties into audio description for film and TV. We've interviewed people that have experience doing live theater. We've interviewed quality control specialists who are blind. We've interviewed an HR representative of Cirque du Soleil and how she's brought accessibility training for coaching people in interview situations. We've had major gifts from AFB that each different interview tethers to building awareness of accessibility. And primarily it's about film and TV audio description, but you can see the spillover effect.
You absolutely can. Have you interviewed, now that I'm going to name drop because the name just popped into you know, when you're thinking of a name and it just pops right up on the screen on the script.
Sure.
Have you interviewed, Jeremy Opperman?
No.
Do you know who he is?
I would love to interview Jeremy.
Do you know who he is?
Yes.
Oh, okay. You do. You're very good at you're very, who taught you that? Who taught you that evasive thing? You are good at evading. You are really good.
It's well, it's you know.
What school did you go to do that? I have to ask I have to ask a yes or no question twice, and eventually I get a yes. Yes, I know who it is. Wait, what are you so afraid? Am I really that intimidating?
Well, no, it's not the intimidation at all.
Yeah, I know.
But it's like I think it's BPM Associates. Is that? I think that's the. I think that's the company if we're talking about the same person. And that's why I was hesitating because I didn't want to
I don't know what the company is called. It's a South African guy that I interviewed. He's done for one thing, he's done a tremendous amount of work in audio description and advocacy for audio description. For another, he's a history buff. I actually recorded 3 episodes with him, 3 or 4 different installments with him. Once we did one episode where he walked through audio description, and then in the same conversation, we did a whole history about his whole life and his family and his relative who fought in the Boer War or something like that, you know, so he can walk you through the history of South Africa. He's just a fascinating,
wow.
Yeah. Nice. And he's a huge leader in audio description. So yeah, that's really, really, really interesting. So you've interviewed a lot of people in the audio description space. Yeah. Have you interviewed people from other countries, you know, around the world? What have you done internationally as far as audio description is concerned? Yeah.
We've done some Europe. There's been a few interviews in the UK and some others. So that's really been interesting. I'm sure you've experienced too that there's different cultural approaches to accessibility. It's really interesting to see how those play out.
Yeah, definitely. And I also noticed that different countries interact differently, you know, online and in the audio space. I actually interviewed the voiceover network too, and I interviewed some people over there in England, and they have a very interesting story and a very different way of going about voice acting. So that's always interesting. Definitely. There's a lot of. Have you interviewed anybody from France? I'm a bilingual English-French guy, by the way. Have you interviewed anybody in French or in France?
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, French people can be pretty shy. I've noticed in the podcast space and in the audio space. I have noticed that over the years. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, that's all really really interesting. So yeah, so a couple hundred episodes where you basically focus on, you know, audio description and interviewing the people around the industry. That's really really cool. Yeah. What has your audience been for that podcast? Do you get mostly Americans or people all over the world who tune into it, or what has been your audience over the years for that?
Primarily U.S. There has been an uptick in international. I founded the audio description discussion group on Facebook, and we've got about 4,000 members, and it's visible without having to log into Facebook. So not even sure how many people are visiting, but that has expanded a lot of awareness of the podcast.
That's super good.
Outside of U.S., yeah.
Yeah. We have a Facebook group here at Aaron's Opinion too that's growing very rapidly too. What's yours called? The Audio Description Project?
Discussion.
The audio description discussion.
Yeah, it's a little on the nose.
Yeah, that's really good. So I'll definitely take a look at that group. Yeah, and that's a public group on Facebook that anybody can just filter into, I guess.
Yeah. There's lively conversations. Serena is also admin for it, so she's been really great about keeping the conversations flowing, and the lively conversations are playful, and people have different approaches, and it's wonderful to see how each perspective joins or doesn't join in the conversation.
Yeah. Absolutely. Have you had a lot of luck on Discord, by the way? Discord has become a very fascinating platform for discussion. What's your take on Discord?
I'm enjoying it. It's a little, I'm not going to call it social media, but it feels like there's an element of that it's that one extra thing, but I also understand how it really benefits, and I see how the different approaches work. I'm on a few Discord sections, but I just haven't explored how I mean, navigation. It's like I will say with what I'm doing now, the social media with Facebook, occasionally Instagram and LinkedIn,
Hmm.
along with the regular work I'm doing, some consulting work I'm doing, and others that it can feel like a lot.
Yeah, no, it is a lot. And that's why I don't pay attention to a lot of it because it's hard to keep track of it all because it's just too many different things. That's why I
Mm,
kind of circulate around a couple groups that I really like and, kind of hover around those types of communities. That's
nice.
a really important thing. Yeah, absolutely. I think, as it comes to audio though, I think the thing with Discord though, if you get into a voice channel with people who want to hear you, I think Discord does have a lot of power in the
Good to
voice
know.
channels. Yeah.
Mm,
But the other problem is not everybody wants to hear what you have to say, so it is a very, no, I'm not saying that about you. I'm just
I'm
saying
not taking it personally.
no,
I'm
no,
agreeing with a
it's
laugh.
just
Yeah,
like, it's just in general, like,
sure.
people on Discord, everybody, that's the other thing that always weirds me out is people always say, well, we want to hear you talk. And then I say something and then they say, well, no, I don't want you to say that. I say, but you said,
Oh,
it's
jeez.
like these people. It's like some
Uh-huh.
people. I saw a comment today. I don't even know who it was or what group it was in. It was a major group, and somebody wrote a complaint. Well, excuse me, in a group, and they said, and then somebody wrote a comment under that, and they said, rather than complaining, you could have just swiped right and not even gone to this group. It's people are
Wow.
so funny how they have to
Yeah.
spend time complaining when
Hmm.
and I get it. People get frustrated. But
Sure.
I've noticed that on social media, people are a lot more resistant to complaint now. People don't listen to complaining nearly as,
Wow.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's really good to know. I
yeah,
like that.
yeah. People don't really like complaints. People like not complaining, and people like going along, and.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It looks like my voiceover just took over here. Hang on a
Oh, that's
second.
that's fine. No
There we
worries.
go. Okay.
Sure, sure. No worries. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's all really fascinating. So what are some other, things that you've, seen within the industry? For example, as I've mentioned, I've got into voice acting a little bit as a volunteer and I love doing voice acting in a volunteer sense. What types of projects have you, been thinking about that you would want to do in the future? Or maybe including other blind people because there's a lot of blind people that want to get into voiceover, but like just for fun. Like, what's your whole philosophy about approaching voiceover from, a hobby perspective? There's the hobby, there's the professional side that you do, obviously, but then there's a lot of hobby voiceover too. Yeah.
That's a good point. I have been focused on the professional side. So
Which is good.
I hire blind professionals, both as voice talents and quality control and also writing. And that's been a fascinating hurdle, even within both sighted and blind communities. How can a blind person write audio description? You have to be sighted. And I've hired two blind audio description writers, and it's been amazing results. So uh, most of my work has been, as you said, on the professional side. But for practicing, I know that youdescribe.org, like YOU, describe.org is a great resource for blind people who have YouTube videos that they want to have audio description for. I haven't been on the site for a long time.
Mm, mm.
There's also, the same sort of thing with the workout group. I occasionally do a workshop and really focus on the collaborative get together with others and support each other because that is the way to grow.
Yeah, no way. Yeah, absolutely right. I've never given this any thought. So let's say a blind person has a YouTube channel, which I do certainly. Um, I guess what I'm wondering is, so if you are a YouTuber, how would audio description fit into a YouTube video that you produce? How would that work? I've never really given that thought.
It's a great question, and I'd like to I'd like to make the comparison to making a film in the backyard for fun, where you pay
Okay.
people with pizza or use a garage and make something up, versus a $100,000 episode of television or a multi-million-dollar TV show. That we're talking different executions on audio description. That if someone's putting together a cute little nephew video in the backyard and just want to make sure that their blind friends can watch it, the audio description is going to be a different level than something that is professionally produced. And so allowing for that and saying, hey, I want blind people to have access to this. And then the next question is, what visuals do blind people need to have for this? And to think about it ahead of time, do you want to create some space to allow for audio description? Do you want to introduce the scene pre-described, similar to how they do in the live theater for blind audiences, to be able to get a sense of the set or the costumes or the characters so that you can dive in right away and understand what's happening? That YouTube itself is such a powerful resource for not only visuals but for storytelling. And so
Absolutely.
why not include, our audio description? And there's ways to do it. I am very much surprising people when I say there are appropriate uses of synthetic voice. And this is one case in particular.
Sure.
If you do not have time or money and you want to provide information only of what's happening visually, then create a synthetic voice to make sure that our blind audiences, but also understand that is the use case. That is information based. That's not story based. And, people are putting together a YouTube video to the best of their ability. Let's figure out how to do the audio description. If you use a human, that's obviously optimal, but there's space for other spaces too, to be able to make sure that the visuals are there. I just am really cautious. I'm very cautious about applying synthetic voice as if it's a fix for everything. And I
Yeah.
think as synthetic voice grows and gets better,
Mm-hmm.
that emotional nuance, that context will catch up, but it's not there yet. And we can all tell.
I mean, and I'm one to think that there's a purpose for AI, and there certainly is, but we have to use the AI properly. There's a proper use of everything. There's a proper use of a podcast, of audio description, of anything. It's just how we use it. That's where it has to fit in. So you can use AI, a synthetic voice, when it's appropriate. For a short project, for something that's creative, for something that's low budget. That's totally fine. That would be my stipulation with it, but. I think if we use AI in the right way, I think it can be very, very, very powerful. It just has to be harnessed. That's all. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and who's harnessing? Who's making that decision?
Well,
That is the
we,
question.
well,
Yeah.
we, the creator, the YouTuber, me, you, the creators over time will make those judgment calls about where AI fits in, I suppose,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how audio description would fit into. It wouldn't be applicable in my case, being that I talk the whole time doing these long form interviews. But I think you're right. I think for maybe a blind person who maybe vlogs, right, goes out into their community, goes to restaurants, interacts with people, I could sort of see voiceover fitting into that in some regard. Yeah, definitely. But it does depend on the context. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And okay, so that's another huge resource that I've never known of. Very good. Okay. And so what are some other creative projects that you want to work on, by the way?
I'm in the midst of some fascinating pivots. Last week I did a keynote for a conference, and it was there was something there that I recognized the work I do in audio description applied to how the keynote was delivered. So I'm starting to approach executive communication using the audio description skills that I've developed, and showing not only for accessibility for blind people, but also some other aspects of voiceover that I think really apply to corporate communications. Obviously, the
What are
book is something that, oh, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. What are those other aspects of voiceover that apply in the corporate world? Yeah,
I
what are some other aspects?
I think that's part of the message is that this, I've been doing this for close to 30 years. I've done
Right.
audio description for the last 10. And there are a lot of things, and again, it's some of the specifics are in the book, but I think what's most important is that there are ways to communicate words that can connect to the audience. And connection is whether it's giving a speech about quarter 5 results or motivating your employees, that there's ways to be authentic and connect and still get the message across. So it's not just, oh yeah, I heard that and nothing gets done. And I'm seeing that aspect is something that a lot of executives did not recognize as being something that might be useful.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting because you're very genuine and you're very approachable and I can tell that you're very authentic. So for me, let me just tell you that for me as a blind person, I can tell authenticity 20 miles away.
You can smell it, huh?
Smell it 25 miles away. Okay. We can tell right away. We can tell right away the difference between someone who's authentic, and someone who's not. And it's immediately noticeable. I don't even have to utter a word.
What's
can
the
tell.
What is the tell?
I don't know.
You just know it, right?
It's just this sixth sense. There's just certain people that over time, certain ways that you have to know to connect with people. And I knew once after I spoke with Serena, Blindy Girl, so much, and that vibe. Once I got that vibe, and then once she said, "Oh, I know Roy Samuelson," I said, "Oh, really? I've been trying to get in touch with him for. By the way, it's nothing personal. I've been wanting to interview you for a while. I'm sure you get this a lot, and I'm so appreciative that we're able to finally talk today. All is good and everything. But what I'll say is, I can tell the vibe. Some people are really genuine on my podcast, and others, every few years you'll get someone that's less genuine, and it's very noticeable.
Wow.
Yeah.
You just know. I love that. I love that.
It's just a sixth sense. I don't know. When you're podcasting, do you ever have a feeling in your heart as a podcaster of, genuine versus less genuine, that slight subtle difference?
Oh yeah. You can, it's similar. That's part of, I'm not blind myself. I'm sighted, but there is something to what you said that authenticity. And I'm sure you as a podcaster can recognize it and try to guide that conversation to be more authentic and personal. That's something that I think is part of our job as hosts.
Sometimes I can guide, but in many cases, I can't guide authenticity just because I can't teach motivation. I'm a teacher. When I'm not podcasting, I'm teaching. You can't teach motivation. I can teach you English, I can teach you French, but I can't teach you motivation.
Gotcha.
So I can't teach genuine. I can't teach that. Yeah. Why do you use voiceover?
It's funny. As soon as you said voiceover, I started thinking, wait, is he asking about Apple's voiceover or is he asking about voiceover? And then it got
in general, because your voiceover turned on and then you said that you're sighted. So anybody in the audience would want to know, well, why are you using a voiceover product?
It just turned on again. There's a few reasons. I want to see how I communicate with others. And when I send a text message, I want to know how it comes across to my friends. And if it sounds stilted, then that might be a time where I need to actually record a voice message. Yeah. I'm playing with punctuation. I play around with going to websites. My own website has had an accessibility audit. We did pretty good, and I'm really pleased with that, but we still have a lot of things to get better. So, yeah, you're laughing?
It's interesting that most people would throw that most people would kind of shy away from that one thing, admitting that their website needed an accessibility audit. That's endearing. That's very endearing.
The thing is, it's like, this is part of the journey. It's never going to be perfect.
That's true.
So let's do the best we can, because Absolutely. I know when, I'm literally approaching blind professionals. I'm supporting anyone that's interested in growing their career and doing the best I can. And if my website is giving them a glitch, that feels hypocritical.
Yeah, sure. That's good. No, that's good. That's great that you're so open to it. Yeah. So, I've never thought about it, but so how does an accessibility audit work? Like, what is that? Like, how do they actually audit a website and then how do they help you improve it?
It's blind people that just scour it. From what I understand, they did not do a mobile test, and I think it was only on a Windows machine. But still, they were able to catch a lot of, it's WCAG stuff. It's the typical, here's something where we were absolutely blocked and we could not get out.
Ooh.
There are only a handful of those. There's also some pretty hard things. There's some medium things, and then there's some kind stuff, the difference between decorative and hidden, and being able to understand, oh yeah, we don't need to decorate everything because that's going to slow things down. Yeah. So it's subtle things like that. And, this literally just happened. So, if you go to my website, there's going to be some issues, but we're working on it.
Good.
And that's the point. part of the accessibility conference last week. We had a pre-conference day, and the very first thing they said was, and I'm not going to name the name of it, but they said, if you use this program, it's not accessible. And I had used this program to create the PDF. So I spent the next day and a half redoing the PDF and still kept the PDF, but also created a blog post that had all the content from the PDF that was accessible. And so it's like all of a sudden now this document became live on the website, and it just became that much more accessible. So it's like we're all learning. We're all trying to do our best.
That's so good. Yeah. That's great. That's wonderful that you're willing. That's so good that you're willing to actively improve. And this is something that I teach people on my podcast and in real life, that if you're not willing to improve, I'm kind of not willing to work with you. So the fact that you're willing to improve motivates me further to listen to what you have to say. That's a really cool thing. That's really excellent. Yeah. Really, really good. Yeah. Nice. Do you have on your website, do you have all of your social media links and like all of your stuff on the website, roysamuelson.com? Yeah.
Yeah. And if you go to roysamuelson.com, it's Roy Samuelson on LinkedIn. Instagram is Roy Samuelson. I'm not as active there. And then, go to the website and sniff around. And if you get stuck, let me know.
Yeah, good. No, we'll definitely check it out, because obviously I like to include links in the episode description, which you did provide a nice paragraph, but then I'll also have to go in and add in a couple links too, so that people can fully connect with you and things like that. And that's all really interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
And so by the way, were you born on the East Coast, or were you just born did you live your whole life, by the way, in California?
I moved out of Pennsylvania many, many years ago.
Yeah.
And so it's just it's different.
And what made you originally leave Pennsylvania?
It was time. I was touring a theater, traveling theater company, and the contract was up, and it was now or never. So I wanted to get away from the slush and snow.
Yeah, I understand. What town in Pennsylvania?
I was central Pennsylvania. So I lived in Pittsburgh. That's usually easier for me to say. I loved Pittsburgh.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I've heard mixed stories about Pennsylvania. Some of the towns are nice. I've heard both good and bad things about Pennsylvania. So it just depends on what neighborhood and where you are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Pennsylvania is a very interesting place for sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay, good. And so have you done a lot of traveling overseas? You strike me as someone who would be very adventurous.
I've got, he's not living there now, but I've got a family member that lived in Japan. So It was, once I got the flight out there, it was a place to kind of anchor down and explore. So I was able to see a lot of Asia and in Thailand and Philippines, as well as Japan.
Yeah.
But, a little bit of Europe, and I'm still enjoying the exploring.
Absolutely. When you were in Japan and these countries in Asia, what do you know about audio description in that part of the world? Do you think there's audio describers like you in Japanese and Tagalog and other languages in Asia?
I did not know about audio description when I traveled there, so it'd be so much fun to go back. And my experience there was before a lot of the translation services on the apps. It was like I'm not gonna call it dark ages. I still had internet, but it was a different time. So I'd be really interested to see how they've grown. And thinking about some of the international destinations, the tourist destinations, I'd be so curious to see how those are there with prices.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know how many blind people in those countries watch movies with Japanese description, just like you do. I'm sure there's people in Japan who do exactly what you do, just in Japanese,
Yeah.
Yeah, with your Facebook group, though, that you mentioned, the audio description discussion, have you gotten a lot of are there a lot of other international people in there that are doing audio description just for other countries? What can you really tell me about the dynamics of that group?
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting because there is sometimes a nuance and sometimes a really different approach. And that's what's been so wonderful, is that these silos, these isolated areas are breaking down, not just in the geography, but in approaches, that people have incredibly different approaches. And it's really interesting to see how that conversation is happening, that people disagree and say, "Oh, I do it this way," and I see how you do it your way. And so it's neat to be able to have that discernment and those options of different approaches. One of the things that's come up a lot is here's a unique approach to AI, and it was on one of more recent podcast episodes where they talked about AI being able to have different descriptions in the sense of details like costumes or shot angles or facial expressions or limited. So it's just bare bones audio description that everyone has their own different approach to what they want. And that kind of personalization is possible with AI.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting because AI can be used to describe, costumes or things within a room. So that is a interesting use of AI for sure. Yeah, no, that's very, very interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
It's aspirational.
Yeah, I would just wonder, when in these groups, how much, I guess what I'm really wondering is, so how much networking have you done with other audio describers around the world? How many, do you network with all the other describers all over the place? Much?
It depends on what you mean by describers. So there are a handful of companies that actually train audio description writers, like 80 training retreats. That's 80trainingretreats.com, and they've trained some of the top audio description writers for TV and film. And so there's a network there. As far as the performers, like what I do, yeah, I've stumbled in. I've referred a lot of people, and I like to if there's a project that I'm not a good fit for, I like to refer other performers. So there's with 12,000 projects, some of those are going to be synthetic voice, but there's a lot of new companies that are coming out. There's a lot of different voice talents that are entering this with voiceover background. And so the network is growing, and it's exciting to see how each person, no matter where they're from or their background or experience, has a way to contribute to this field and make it even better than what it was before they joined.
Yeah, that's really good. If we can keep improving the field and making it more genuine, that's what really matters. To
Yeah,
me, as a blind person, it's about the genuine. It's about how much you love doing it, how much you care. That's
yeah,
what it's about for me. Yeah,
yeah.
that's super
Nice,
good. Super, super good. Yeah.
nice. Well,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you for this. This is great. It's so good to talk to you, Aaron.
How many other podcasters have reached out to you over the years? How many other times have you been on podcasts that like not
Not
yours?
enough. I'm going to say not enough. And I wish I could have, had I met you outside of Serena, I definitely would have been interested and had the
Huh.
conversation. So,
Good, good.
I'm encouraging more of that. So I've been on a few, and I try to keep those updated.
Yeah, so what other podcasts have you been on? Because maybe I know that maybe there are other blind people that I've spoken with or know, maybe.
Yeah, I think I'm going to direct you to ACB, adp.acb.org. The Audio Description Project has a list of all the podcasts that have to do with audio description. It's a big list, and it's starting to grow. I really am appreciating all the
Hmm.
different things that are out there. Yeah, so
So in
I
other words, you're
suggest
saying
go
there's
there.
a so you're saying there's a list of podcasts that just talk about audio description. That's
Audio
a pretty
Description Project, adp.acb.org. Audio Description
okay.
Project, American Council of the Blind.org.
That's a pretty specific thing. I didn't,
Yeah.
and that's good for me to know because that's a very specific niche that I didn't.
Hmm.
I'm not surprised it's there, but that's a very specific thing.
Yeah.
And that's very good to know. Yeah.
Hmm.
So when you're not and the other thing that I would wonder is, and I'm sure it varies from project to project, how many hours does a professional audio performer like you spend on any given scene or project? Does it all depend? How long do
Yeah.
these things take?
It all depends. There's sometimes I've got 600 cues and I get them at 2 a.m. and they're due at 6 a.m. There's sometimes where I've got 50 cues and it's due 3 business days from now. There's sometimes I have to show up in the studio and they're printing the script as I'm showing up or they're uploading it to a device. It really depends. It
Right.
all very varies. And so that's the other thing is being adaptable and understanding, hey, this company likes to work this way, this company likes to work that way, and every project, even though it's audio description, can be approached differently.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So what are your hobbies when you're not doing all this work? What else do you do in your free time? What are your hobbies?
I like escape rooms, Aaron. Have you heard of escape rooms?
No, but you know what? I think you should describe one because you have a perfect escape room voice.
Thank you. That's right. It's like an indoor scavenger hunt with
Yeah, no, I've done
puzzles.
it.
Oh,
I've done
right?
it.
Okay, cool,
They're
cool,
not
cool.
so good for they're a little bit let's see, this is another thing. An escape room is a little bit less applicable for blind people. That's a little bit harder for blind
I
people in some
pitched
ways.
Ira.
Yeah.
I pitched Ira to be a part of the audio description for an escape room. Like I've done an audio description, not audio description. I've done a virtual escape room where it was entirely on video. And if you can imagine an IRA agent dedicated to the audio description for an escape room, who knows the plot and the turning points, and whether you wear
Oh,
meta
yeah.
glasses or whether you wear like a little clip-on video, it's like it's the same thing. It's like having a team member that is virtually there. So I pitched that to Ira like 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm now I want to reapproach them and be like, hey, listen, I just talked to Aaron. We've got to get this audio description going for escape
That would
rooms.
be
How do we
so much
do it?
fun for the IRA agent because then they'd be able to like sit there and they'd be watching the blind person like fumble around and they'd be like, they'd have to mute because they'd be like laughing or trying to say, no, no, don't touch that first. No, 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 not there, not there. So that would be a lot of fun. I don't know how applicable it would be and I don't know how much use they would get out of it, but it would definitely be a really challenging project and a fun one for sure. Yeah.
So much fun. So much fun.
Yeah, really good, really good. And then outside of that, what else do you do at your free time?
I have been taking walks, Aaron. I am interrupting the workflow, which seems to go from six. Like today is a pretty intense day. I've got about 2 more hours of audio recording to do and 3 more meetings. Plus, I've got some deadlines to get done. I had 3 meetings this morning already. It just doesn't stop, and so what
Yeah,
I'm doing is forcing a stop. So I've got a little alarm that goes off, and when the alarm goes off, I stop whatever I'm doing and I go outside and I walk. And that has
that's really
been
good.
a life-changing thing. I wish I would have learned that when I was a kid.
Yeah, you got to stay physically active. You have to be physical. You have to stay physically fit and physically active to be able to perform at your best. That's a trick. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What are some? I'm sure you have a lot of questions for Aaron Richmond and Aaron's opinion. So to really get under my skin, to really make me sweat, what do you really want to ask me? Aaron Richmond, Aaron's opinion. I'm sure you can ask me some great questions.
What did you want to get out of this interview with me?
Well, certainly it's a great interview for sure. What I wanted to get out of it was what I just got out of it, which is a great conversation. And I learned a lot from you. I actively learned from you. And the thing that I like is how you really like to have a back and forth conversation. If you go back to a lot of my previous episodes and previous work, you'll hear that in some cases I let the guests talk for a very long time in a long form setting. Not all guests want to have a back and forth. I'm glad you do. I'm glad you do because back and forth can be really fun when we bounce off each other like that. So I
Hmm.
really liked the dynamic of having such a great back and forth conversation. I really, really liked that. And that's a really subtle thing that podcasters have to practice is how to have a back and forth conversation. So that really stood out to me, how much you want to interact. You're very, very, very interactive and that's very, very good. Yeah.
Nice, thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. What else do you want to know?
It's what is something that you're looking forward to?
Continuing to build more podcast episodes because I
Nice.
find that people really need this. I find as you do that blind people need podcasts to listen to, whether it's yours, mine, Serena's, whoever it is. We
Hmm.
need more content. There are so many blind people who are maybe not working full time like we are, maybe not, maybe they need, something genuine to fill their time. And I find that audio consumption and podcasting is a great source of time, is a great use of time for people. So that's why, we keep doing it and why I keep building out the next episode.
Nice. I
Yeah.
can't wait to hear this one.
Oh, I'll definitely tag you. I'll tag you on all the socials,
Perfect.
as we say. Yeah, that's why I was
Perfect.
asking about that. Because tagging people appropriately is how the audience finds out. You'd be
Nice.
surprised. You can have hundreds of stuff, but if nobody listens, then it's harder. That's a
Yeah.
weird thing too, is getting the word out about stuff. That's getting harder. It's like all these groups, it's all a blur sometimes,
Hmm.
standing
Hmm.
out is really hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this. This is wonderful. I've had such a great time.
You're very welcome, Roy. Absolutely. You are forever welcome in the Aaron's Opinion family. And before we go, I always like to ask, if you can ask me one question to make me sweat to get under my skin as a podcaster, what do you want to ask? Or have you asked all your questions?
What temperature does the room have to be for you to sweat?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I live on the East Coast, so it gets pretty warm where I'm from.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
So if I had access to your thermostat, I would turn up the temperature to make you sweat. I don't know how else to do it.
It's pretty clever.
It's the best I
got. Well, thank you so much. If somebody wants to get in touch with Roy, how can they reach you? Roy Samuelson.
Yeah, roysamuelson.com, and go to the website. At the bottom of every page, there's a get in touch form to get on the newsletter. I do a lot of blogs and such.
Absolutely.
And if somebody wants to email me, it's my name at roysamuelson.com. So that's Roy at roysamuelson.com.
All right. And this has been Aaron's Opinion. Roy Samuelson, as I said at the beginning, it's been an absolute honor to interview a great legend in the audio description community like you. And I really loved the conversation. So thank you so much. And do you know how I end an episode of Aaron's Opinion?
Well, thank you so much. This has been great. Tell me.
We say thank you so much. Keep podcasting out there and have a great day, everybody. And until next time, help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow.